What if that nagging feeling in the back of your neck was real? What if those hands reaching out from the dark that you believed were there were there? What if the monster in the basement really existed? And what if there was really something under the bed? Would you have the courage to face your fears?
Chapter 1. When the World Caught Fire. The day the dead started walking was the day I finally felt alive. Ironic, ain't it? Name's Jack Burner. Yeah, I know. Like the universe has a sick sense of humor. And I've always had a thing for fire. Not your run-of-the-mill fascination, mind you. We're talking full-blown, get-me-to-a-shrink pyromania. But let me tell you, when the shit hit the fan and zombies started gnawing on folks' faces, my condition finally became a lot less problematic. It started like any other Tuesday. I was sitting in my crappy apartment, flicking my Zippo open and closed, watching the flame dance. The TV droned on about some new virus. Whatever. I'd heard it all before. Then the screaming started. At first, I thought it was just the usual neighborhood ruckus, but it kept getting louder, more frantic. I dragged myself to the window, Zippo still in hand. Holy mother of... The street below was chaos. People running, shoving, falling. And behind them? Well, I'd seen enough late-night horror flicks to know what zombies looked like. But these are the real deal. And they were hungry. I stood there, transfixed, as a woman in a tattered business suit sank her teeth into a mailman's neck. The blood sprayed like a geyser, and something in my brain clicked. Fire. Fire would fix this. Before I knew it, I was in the kitchen, grabbing anything flammable. Cooking oil, air freshener, my secret stash of gasoline. Don't ask. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. No, this was excitement. I'd always known fire would save me someday. I rigged up a makeshift Molotov cocktail, something I'd only ever read about but never dared try. The shouts and moans were getting closer, feet pounding up the stairs. I opened my door just as Mrs. Halverson from 4B rounded the corner. Only it wasn't Mrs. Halverson anymore. Her eyes were milky white, her jaw hanging at an impossible angle. "Sorry, Mrs. H," I muttered, flicking my Zippo. The bottle sailed through the air into a beautiful arc. Time seemed to slow as it neared her face, then whoosh! The hallway erupted into flames. Mrs. Halverson, or what used to be her, shrieked and flailed, her undead flesh bubbling and charring. I stood in my doorway, watching the inferno spread. The heat flicked at my face, but I didn't flinch. This was my element. For the first time in my life, I felt right. As the flames consumed the hallway and the zombies that used to bake me cookies, I knew two things for certain. 1, the world as we knew it was over. 2, I was finally going to fit right in. I gripped my Zippo tighter and grinned. The apocalypse had arrived, and brother, it was going to burn. Chapter 2. Baptism by Fire. I'd like to say I had a plan after torching Mrs. Halverson, but that would be a lie. Truth is, I stood there gawking at the flames like a moth to a... well, you get the idea. The fire alarm's shrill wail snapped me out of it. Shit, I muttered, suddenly remembering I lived in this tinderbox too. I grabbed my go bag, always prepared for the day I'd finally snap and burn the place down, and bolted. The stairwell was a smoky hell, but compared to what waited outside, it was a goddamn cakewalk. The street was like something out of this disaster flicks, only the special effects budget was through the roof. Cars overturned, people running and screaming, the air thick with panic and copper stench of blood. And the zombies. Jesus H. Christ, the zombies. They shuffled and lurched, faces slack, eyes empty. But don't let the movies fool you. These bastards could move when they wanted to. I watched one take down a guy built like a linebacker, ripping into his gut like it was an all-you-can-eat buffet. My stomach lurched, but a sick part of me couldn't look away. That's when I noticed something peculiar. The zombies. They were avoiding the burning wreckage of a car down the block, shying away from the flames like like they were afraid. A light bulb went off in my head, brighter than the inferno I'd left behind. Fire. It wasn't just my obsession anymore. It was my ticket to survival. I clutched my bag tighter and started moving, keeping close to the burning debris when I could. My eyes darted around, cataloging everything flammable. In this new world, a dumpster wasn't trash. It was kindling. An abandoned car wasn't a wreck. It was a potential explosion. As I rounded the corner, I came face to face with one of them. A kid. Couldn't have been more than 16. His varsity jacket was soaked in blood. And half of his face, well, let's just say he wouldn't be winning any beauty pageants. He lunged at me, teeth bared. I stumbled back, fumbling for my Zippo. My back hit a wall, and for a second, I thought this was it. Death by a teenage zombie. What a way to go. But my finger found the lighter, and muscle memory took over. Click, flame, whoosh. I don't know if it was luck or some twisted divine intervention, but my hand knocked over a bottle of cheap booze some poor bastard had dropped into the chaos. The liquor caught fire, and suddenly, the zombie kid was engulfed. He screamed, honest to God screamed, and thrashed around like a marionette with tangled strings. I watched, mesmerized. As the flames consumed him, the smell was awful, like burning pork and rot. But I couldn't look away. When it was over, when the zombie was nothing but a smoldering heap on the pavement, I realized I was laughing like a lunatic in a world gone mad. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand, tasting salt. Sweat or tears, I couldn't tell. Didn't matter. What mattered was that I was alive, and I'd found my weapon against the apocalypse. As sirens wailed in the distance and smoke billowed over the city, I gripped my Zippo and grinned. The world was burning, and for once in my miserable life, I was ready for it. Let it all burn. I'd dance in the ashes. Chapter 3. The Burning Man. 3 days into the apocalypse, and I was already a legend. The Burning Man, they called me. Fitting, I suppose. I'd made my way to the outskirts of the city, leaving a trail of charred zombies in my wake. My arsenal had grown, a backpack full of accelerants, a belt of Molotov cocktails, and a jury-rigged flamethrower strapped to my arm. I was a walking inferno, and for once in my life, that felt right. It was near the old industrial park that I found them. A group of survivors holed up in an abandoned warehouse. They'd barricaded the doors with shelving units and old machinery. But I wouldn't hold forever. The moans of the undead echoed from all sides. I watched from the roof of a nearby building, weighing my options. I could slip away, continue on my own. But something tugged at me. Maybe it was the sight of the kids huddled behind the adults. Maybe it was just boredom. Either way, I found myself reaching for my flamethrower. "Hey, dickheads!" I shouted, my voice raw from disuse. "How about a barbecue?" The zombies turned, drawn by the sound. I grinned, feeling the familiar rush as I squeezed the trigger. A stream of liquid fire arced through the air, catching the first wave of undead. They went up like torches, flailing and screaming. I laughed, drunk on the heat and destruction. "Come on, you ugly bastards! Who wants some?" They came at me in droves, and I met them with fire. The air filled with the stench of burning flesh and the crackle of flames. It was beautiful. It was terrible. It was home. When it was over, when the last zombie had fallen and the fires were dying down, I realized the survivors were staring at me. Fear and awe mingled in their eyes. A man stepped forward, his face streaked with soot and sweat. What are you?" I twirled my Zippo, considering the question. Who was I? A psycho with a fetish for flame? A hero forged in the crucible of the apocalypse? Maybe both? Maybe neither. I smiled, tasting ash on my lips. Just a guy who likes to watch the world burn. As I stepped towards them, the heat of the dying fire at my back, I knew only one thing for certain. In this new world of the dead, I had finally found my place among the living. And God help anyone, living or dead, who tried to take it from me. Chapter 4. Uneasy Alliances. The survivors eyed me wearily as I approached, the smell of smoke and charred flesh clinging to me like a second skin. Can't say I blame them. I must have looked like hell incarnate, covered in soot and grinning like a madman. Name is Jack, I said, holstering my flamethrower. Jack Burner. A woman with steely eyes and a shotgun stepped forward. I'm Sarah. That was, impressive and terrifying. I shrugged. It's a terrifying world now, sweetheart. Her eyes narrowed. Don't call me sweetheart. I liked her already. The group introduced themselves. A mismatched bunch of office workers, students, and a couple of ex-military types. They've been holed up for days, running low on food and hope. We've got to move, Sarah said. This place won't hold much longer. I nodded, scanning the horizon. Pillars of smoke rose in the distance. A grim map of the city's fall. I might know a place. Old steel mill on the river. Defendable, lots of fuel. The group exchanged glances. I could see the debate in their eyes. Trust a pyromaniac stranger or take their chances alone. Finally, a grizzled old man spoke up. Beats staying here to be zombie chow. And just like that, I had a team. We moved out at dusk, a ragtag caravan of survivors. I took point, Zippo in one hand, flamethrower primed in the other. The city was a wasteland. Storefronts shattered, cars abandoned, and everywhere the shuffling dead. We skirted around the larger hordes, but conflict was inevitable. When it came, it was swift and brutal. I'd light them up, and the others would pick off the stragglers. We worked well together, I had to admit. As we approached the steel mill, I felt a twinge of something. Responsibility? Concern? Foreign emotions for a guy who'd spent his life not giving a damn about anyone. Home sweet home, I muttered as the mill's silhouette loomed before us. Sarah came up beside me, her shotgun at the ready. You sure about this place? I flicked my Zippo open, watching the flame dance. Honey, if there's one thing I'm sure about, it's where to find the best kindling. She rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide a smirk. Let's hope your FireBug skills are good for more than just barbecuing zombies. As we approached the mill's gates, I realized I was at a crossroads. I could ditch these people, go back to my solitary life of pyromania and survival. Or I could stay, protect them, maybe even find some screwed up version of redemption. I looked back at the group, tired, scared, but alive. Then at the flame in my hand. All right, folks, I said, snapping the Zippo shut. Welcome to Fort Inferno. Let's make this place burn bright. Little did I know, the real Inferno was yet to come, and it would test not just my skills with fire, but the very core of who I was, or who I would become. Chapter 5. The Siege of Fort Inferno. Weeks passed, and Fort Inferno became a beacon of hope in the wasteland. We fortified the mill, rigging flame traps and fuel lines around the perimeter. I taught the survivors the art of controlled burns and makeshift explosives. For the first time in my life, my obsession was saving lives instead of destroying them. But our success didn't go unnoticed. It started with a trickle of new survivors, drawn by the smoke and rumors of safety. Then came the hordes, waves of undead crashing against our fiery defenses. We held them off, but each attack left us weaker, our fuel supplies dwindling. That's when we spotted them. Not zombies, but the living. A gang of marauders, armed to the teeth and eyeing our fortress with greedy eyes. They'd united the hordes, using them as cannon fodder to weaken us. They'll be coming for us soon, Sarah said, her face grim in the firelight. I nodded, feeling the weight of the leadership I'd never asked for. Then, we'll give them a show they'll never forget. We worked through the night, preparing for our last stand. As dawn broke, the attack began. Zombies flooded toward us, with the marauders driving them forward. Our outer defenses fell quickly, flames sputtering out as the undead pressed on, heedless of the fire. I stood atop the main building, flamethrower in hand, watching our world burn. Sarah was beside me, as always, her shotgun blazing. Any last words, Burner? She shouted over the chaos. I grinned, despite everything. Just getting warmed up, sweetheart. As the horde breached our inner walls, I knew it was time for the final play. I'd rigged the entire complex to blow. A failsafe I'd hoped we'd never need. One spark, and Fort Inferno would live up to its name. I looked at Sarah, saw the understanding in her eyes. She nodded, gripping my hand. I flicked my trusty Zippo one last time, savoring the flame. Let's light it up. Chapter 6. From the Ashes. The explosion was magnificent, a towering inferno that consumed zombies, marauders, and Fort Inferno alike. In those final moments, as fire rained down and the world burned orange, I felt a strange peace, then darkness. I awoke to the sound of lapping water. I was on a boat, a small fishing trawler, drifting down the river. Sarah sat nearby, bandaging a nasty burn on her arm. "Welcome back to the land of the living," she said, relief evident in her voice. I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. The others? Her face fell. Some made it to the escape boats. Most didn't. The weight of it hit me hard. All those lives, gone because of my plan, my fire. "Hey," Sarah said softly, reading my thoughts. "You saved us. Gave us a fighting chance." I stared at my hands, scarred and blistered. The hands of a destroyer, but also a protector. Maybe even a hero in this messed up world. "So," I croaked, "where to now, sweetheart?" Sarah smiled, pointing downstream. "I heard rumors of a settlement up north. Figured we could check it out. Maybe help them fireproof the place." I felt a chuckle bubble up, surprising myself. Sounds like a plan. Think they need a slightly crispy pyromaniac and his shotgun-toting partner? "If they don't, we'll make them an offer they can't refuse," she said with a wink. As we drifted towards an uncertain future, I realized something. The old world had burned away, taking with it the person I used to be. From those ashes, something new had arisen. Someone who could use his curse as a gift, who could build as well as destroy. I took out my Zippo, miraculously intact, and flicked it open. The small flame danced in the breeze, a reminder of the inferno we'd survived, and the fire is yet to come. "Ready to set the world on fire?" I asked Sarah. She leaned in, her eyes reflecting the flame. "Always." And with that, we sailed on, two phoenixes rising from the ashes of the apocalypse, ready to face whatever burned on the horizon. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story. Come back next week for some more zombie stories. And as always, remember to face your fears.